I need to know everything, who and the what and the where, I need everything. Trust me, I hear what you're saying, but act like it's new what you're telling me. I'm curious, George, I hop in the Porsche, it's 5 and a horse, I'm ready for war, I'm coming for throats, to turn to a ghost, I need to know everything. Now you be surprised at the info you get is by letting them talk, so I'm letting them talk.
All right, man, that was getting me hyped up. I am so ready for the season to get started. Obviously tonight here on ADP, presented by Bite Size Sports. It's me, Dan, and then we've got Trevor as well. We're talking wide receivers. We're talking redraft leagues, getting those rankings going. But, man, we have more preseason football this weekend, including the Kansas City Chiefs on the 13th. I am so pumped to see some of these guys get out on the field.
Finally, we'll get our own team out there. Thursday night was a little bit of a teaser last week.
It's a teaser.
It's kind of junk football because it's, you got Zach Wilson and, these 5th round, 6th round guys who are just trying to make the team. But, there's some things that you can take away from it. And the most thing that I took is like, we got football. We have real live football on our televisions. We are less than a month away from that Thursday night Chiefs, Lions hanging another banner.
Yep, man, I cannot wait. I think that was the biggest as a Chiefs fan whenever we won the Super Bowl in 2019, right? The next year was the COVID season, and there was like the pageantry of dropping the banner and all of that we had to miss out on. And then it was like we lose the next Super Bowl to Tampa, and then we drop the banner for everybody the following season. It was kind of like, man, imagine just like being the defending champs while you're doing that. And all of these things that the players are enjoying this offseason, those are things the fans are missing out on too, right? There's all these bragging rights, and we were locked in during COVID. So this has been honestly a pretty awesome offseason, and I can't wait to strut around Arrowhead as the reigning champ.
Right. That's right. Been checking out the ticket prices. I will not be there on that Thursday night, unfortunately. I assume you'll be there.
Yep. Actually, they just sent me my on this side. I got the 5-year season ticket hat. So appreciate you, Chiefs.
Yeah, I will not make it. Lowest I've seen so far is low 300s, dollars, not level. So it's going to be a hard one to get into.
That's hefty.
Rightful or so, right? Like we didn't get to see it the first time around, the way that we wanted to see it. So it's going to be awesome there in Arrowhead, and just overall awesome to get kicked off for the NFL season. And what a barn burner! I mean, the Chiefs, Lions. We're going to talk about a couple of these wide receivers tonight.
Yeah.
Great offenses going at it. Lions defense is going to be trash. Chiefs could come out, put up 40-something points in the first game and also give up 30-something points. Like I could see it being high flying coming out of the gates. I know these offenses usually take a game or two, but it could be a really fun one coming out of the gates. And there's going to be some wide receivers out there on that field that we are going to have our eyes peeled to because of fantasy football.
1,000%, dude. It's going to be a blast. I think both of these offenses carry a lot of firepower. Obviously, you got the best quarterback in the game, Kansas City side, but everything that the Lions did last year, they're going to be building on. One of the receivers that I think has a lot of potential there. We'll talk about them later for sure, but let's jump into some NFL news. Just a couple things to touch on real quick, updates. Everything news related for fantasy is like running back heavy. I just feel like it's all been running back news. Unfortunately, Marlon Mack tore his Achilles. Is that 2 years in a row? Or is it like he did one, had
Achilles last year as well?
Another? I can't remember exactly how that broke down.
It's definitely his second one. And I remember because the first one was the first one? No, it was whenever JT was a rookie, right?
Yes.
I think it was when he was a rookie and he tore his Achilles and it was just over. Like then it was just JT's.
Then it was
JT's team.
Yep. He took over the reins from there. And then after that, Marlon Mack went to – did he go to Houston? He kind of pinballed around to some different places after he got injured. And finally landed in a position with the Cardinals where he would have got, I think, RB2 touches right behind James Conner, right? Benjamin left. They didn't really have a ton of other running backs in that room. So it's really unfortunate that he, had this opportunity taken from him.
Yeah, and that's just a guy who never really could make it happen and could sustain it, happening. And here he is, probably a career that's not going to flourish at this point, unfortunately, due to these injuries.
Unfortunately,
who they got over there? Keontae Ingram, Corey Clement. Man, wasn't Corey Clement in like Philadelphia for 10 years?
He was for a long time. I feel like he's been like a waiver wire pickup for me since like 2016.
That's right. So it looks like Keontae Ingram will be the number 2 there in Arizona now. Not a bad flyer type guy because James Conner is definitely older, and Keontae Ingram, I believe, was a rookie last year. So we kind of talked a little bit about Trey McBride last week. This Cardinals team not going anywhere this year, so they might be giving some of these young guys a chance. They'll probably also run James Conner into the ground, I would assume.
Yeah, that's my guess. They're going to get him involved in the passing game, that sort of thing. Kareem Hunt, talking about a guy who's been around for a while, did a couple visits this week with the Saints and the Colts. Obviously, Alvin Kamara got his suspension handed down. That is 3 games, is what was ruled after he met with Roger Goodell. But Kareem Hunt, where's he going to land? He left New Orleans without a deal because there's other teams calling. He left the Colts without a deal. I'm guessing the Cardinals might call him. I'm sure there's some other teams kind of on his radar. Maybe the teams that worked out guys like Fournette and Zeke, New England being one of those teams like that. Those are all scenarios I can see him jumping into.
It's so weird. I mean, we thought Dalvin Cook was going to sign just a week ago with the New York Jets when he visited there. He wasn't going to leave without a contract, and here we are still with all these veteran running backs without teams. We are going to, at some point, one of the dominoes will fall, and I do believe they will start to kind of fill in these back end roster spots. But you mentioned Arizona. We kind of, obviously without Marlon Mack now, I would be intrigued if a guy like Kareem Hunt landed in Arizona. That would definitely get my ears perked a little bit, because not that I think he jumps into top, 20 RB territory, but I think he would definitely, he could become usable later in the year in bye weeks. If you're trying to survive a bye week from a Christian McCaffrey, one of these top running backs, you just need somebody to fill in. He could fill in there. But right now he still doesn't have a home. Right now he's not really on my radar until I know where his landing spot is. I'm kind of getting there with Fournette and Zeke as well. Still interested in Dalvin Cook because I think he's got it a little bit still, but need to see where that's at. I wish he would have signed with the Jets because I have a ton of Devin A-Chain. I've loved Devin A-Chain. Akine is what I used to call him. I don't know what I'm supposed to call him still.
I'm going with A-Chain now.
And then we see like Waddle's coming out and talking highly of him. I'm getting excited for this Devin A-Chain guy.
Yep.
And I just don't want Dalvin Cook to go there just selfishly because I want to see how A-Chain does there in Miami. And I do think, most of Jeff Wilson will be fine, but I really think A-Chain has an opportunity to take that job and run with it for sure in Miami. So we'll see where some of these running backs fall for sure.
No, I totally agree. I think I had my first redraft league draft last Sunday, kind of broke the seal on it earlier than usual.
You got the wide receivers.
Oh man, I went wide receiver heavy, took the strategy we talked about, right? The 0 RB strategy, got Kamara late in the 12th man, ended up with A-Chain actually. So I'm really hyped about him. So yeah, it ended up being a team that I feel pretty comfortable with. Cooper Kupp, Patrick Mahomes, CeeDee Lamb. There's a lot of potential there, but if A-Chain pops off like what you're saying and how I feel, I kind of overdrafted him based on what he's been going in ADP. I think he's like a round 12 kind of guy. Usually I took him in middle of round 10. So I did jump the shark a little bit on him. Probably could have grabbed another guy there, but But yeah, I mean, I'm really pumped about what he's going to do there, and I selfishly am with you. Dalvin Cook sign anywhere else.
Anywhere else, even if it's the Jets, I'm okay with that. Lee says Fournette to Arizona. Again, another guy I would be intrigued by. Fournette catches passes.
Fit.
James Conner doesn't catch passes. They're going to have some guy by the name of David Blau. I don't actually know if David Blau's there. I just know that's like the quarterback in Detroit that one day that nobody knew who he was. They're going to have some no-name quarterback.
Is McSorley down there? I don't know.
Is he still there? I do know Colt McCoy's there still.
Yes, that's the guy.
You know, who knows who's going to be throwing passes there. But if you get a pass-catching running back like a Leonard Fournette or a Kareem Hunt, that's going to really help that quarterback. So that would make me intrigued for sure.
Absolutely. Well, should we build up some more suspense for these top 15 receivers, or do you want to bust into this thing?
Let's just jump into the life of a wide receiver. As Lee says here, if you're here with us in the chat, thank you so much. If you're watching on Facebook, we appreciate it. Hit that like button if you would. Come on over to YouTube if you want. If Facebook's more your jam, you can still comment there as well. But come on over to YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Bite Size Sports, and jump in the chat. Let us know what you think about these wide receivers as we go through them. We'll have some questions kind of for each other at the end. Love to hear your guys' answers as well. And of course, as always, tell us where we're wrong. Tell us where we're wrong. If you don't like our rankings, let us hear it in the chat, because we're not the end all. We are a resource for you to get better and better prepared. But we like to hear your comments as well. So jump in the chat with us tonight. And Dan, I will let let's start at the top. What do you think? We start at the top because the top's easy.
Top's easy.
And we're the same. We're the same at the top. We got one difference, but the top four are the same.
I think
guys.
You're splitting hairs
exactly
with each of these four guys, right? Clear number one, John Boyd. If you're listening, this probably isn't a surprise to you. It's Justin Jefferson. We talked about it in the last episode. I mean, clear number one. Jamar Chase at 2. You and I are in agreement there. We split hairs at 3 and 4, right? So I'll let you talk about your number 3, and then I'll talk about mine.
Yeah, I have to pull this up because I want to make sure I almost said Hill, and I was like, that's not right. I have Cup confirmed.
It's so close. It's so close.
It really is. I do have this backwards, but that's all good. I have Cooper Kupp in front of Tyreek Hill. Cooper Kupp last year through 9 weeks, full point PPR. He was the number one wide receiver in points per game. So he only played 8 games in 9 weeks because of the bye week. Tyreek Hill, I actually believe, had the most overall points.
Yep.
But through, in points per game for his first 8 games, he's the number one overall. He's a full point ahead of Stephon Diggs at that point. He was cruising. This offense was cruising. Then he gets hurt in week 10. Yes, he's definitely getting older. He's 30 years old this year. Stafford is also getting older. Both of their health is a concern. So, you want to start splitting hairs. I can see the negative part of it just because of the health concern and the age of these guys here. But Cooper Kupp's 1 year removed from complete domination at the wide receiver position, plus half the season last year he was dominating. Same offense, same quarterback, same coach, a healthy Cooper Kupp, a healthy Matt Stafford. There's no reason he's not a top 5 wide receiver again this year.
Yep, and that's the part that puts Hill above Kupp for me is the health factor, right? Hill has missed 2-3 games in his career, and it was mostly in one season when he broke his collarbone, or I guess that would have been like 4 games, something along those lines. He's just been a very healthy receiver and consistent in that regard. I think another year with Tua, a lot of his value is impacted because Tua wasn't on the field for some of those games, which is where he kind of fell off towards the back half of the season. Not fell off completely. Obviously, he was still top 5, top 4 guy. But the fact that Tua's coming in fully healthy, I think there's a really good opportunity for him to continue to build that chemistry and blow up. And obviously, he's the best receiver on that field. Anytime the Dolphins offense is out there, there's another guy we'll talk about here in a little bit who I think has a lot of talent. But with Tyreek Hill, I just got to put him a little bit ahead of Cooper Kupp because we saw that Rams offense just completely implode due to injury last year. And I don't know, I need a little bit of prove it, but Kupp's already kind of proven it to stay in my top 4 for sure.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. If you think about it, that's 25 straight games essentially where he was the number 1 wide receiver. Yeah. But yeah, coming off injury, you're not going to necessarily know exactly how they're going to come out to start the year, but you do kind of have an idea of how Tyreek and Tua are going to come out, and Jalen Waddle and company. So, yep. All right, so that's our 4 tier 1 wide receivers, 1 through 4. Again, they're pretty well the same. Let us know if you're in the chat. Who do you like better, Tyreek Hill or Cooper Kupp? As we go on to our tier 2, Dan, you've got 3 guys in this tier. We only have 1 guy that is the same, just one, which is just interesting. And it's both of our 5th guy, right? So we both have Stephon Diggs at 5. Dan, let's talk a little bit about this tier 2 for you.
So tier 2 for me was difficult not to include the other guy that you have in that tier. I think with what I put in immediately after Diggs is CeeDee Lamb. I think there's a really good opportunity for him to continue to build on his success last year. I think he had a little bit of a breakout year. It was all career highs across the board, and he was doing some phenomenal things. And the Cowboys offense is getting a lot of hype as they do every year, but this year feels a little bit different to me. I think CeeDee Lamb's going to come in and just kind of take the NFC by storm a little bit. They have a weaker conference over there, especially when it comes to defenses. And I just really like him. Obviously, your guy has that same potential, but I'm really big on CeeDee Lamb. And then I'm following that up with Davante Adams. I mean, he had Derek Carr throwing to him for the majority of the season. And then after that, they switched up the quarterbacks and he was still balling out with Jared Stidham. So, I mean, it's just a proof to me that Davante Adams is almost like how DeAndre Hopkins was for most of his career. You just doesn't matter who's under center. He's going to catch those balls and get open and catch 3 touchdowns every other week and do what he does in the end zone. So I'm not going to overdraft for Davante Adams, but I definitely like him a little bit more than the rest of the guys on my list.
Yeah, and he's a baller. I mean, he is one of the best that we've seen play the position. Lee says Kupp is not in my top 6. JJ, Chase, Hill, AJ Brown, and Diggs. Well, that's only 5. Who else is up there? Maybe Kupp's supposed to be 6. AJ Brown up there though at number 4, which is a little interesting and really not too far off where I have AJ Brown, as I have AJ Brown sitting here at number 6. Right after the aforementioned Stephon Diggs. A.J. Brown last season, wide receiver 6. Obviously, I'm ranking him right back in that same spot. A.J. Brown was one of just 4 wide receivers to hit at least 39 PPR points in a single game last year. Number 1, Justin Jefferson, Jalen Waddle, and also Amon-Ra St. Brown all hit 39 or 40 points last year in one game. A.J. Brown over 25 points in 4 games last season. And that was, if you remember, the Philadelphia Eagles were not a pass-heavy team. In fact, they were the 4th most run-heavy team in the league. Nearly 50% of their plays were run plays, all while A.J. Brown's still producing top 6 wide receiver week in and week out. Out of the 5 wide receivers that finished above A.J. Brown last year, CeeDee Lamb had the next highest run rate on a team. That was 9th with the Cowboys at 47%. The top 4 guys, they were all bottom of the league. Those teams were bottom of the league in run rate. So A.J. Brown's doing this on a team that's running the ball 50% of the time. I just think that is phenomenal for this guy. I also don't think the Philadelphia Eagles are going to run the ball 50% of the time this year because they're going to have a tough schedule. They're have the number 1 schedule, right? So they're playing all the number 1 teams. they're not necessarily going to be able to run the ball all the time like they did last year. I think that kind of keeps A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith in the game a little bit, Dallas Goedert in the game a little bit more, Jalen Hurts throwing the ball a little bit more in these games. So I like A.J. Brown here to slide into my top 6.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, if we're moving into my tier 3, it's led off with A.J. Brown. I think he's a solid receiver. My fear was actually related to their run rate and what that was going to look like. I definitely see your point, right? I don't think they're going to be in a position where it's like garbage time all the time for them. I think that percentage maybe is skewed a little bit too because of all their QB sneaks that they were running. Those are technically
1-yarders.
Right. But my big fear with A.J. Brown is less about the run and more about the breakout potential of Devontae Smith and what that's going to look like as far as targets that are going to be shifting over to him. I think he has really big potential to kind of jump onto the scene. And, that's just something that I try to look at when it comes to these receivers. Now, right after A.J. Brown, I do have Garrett Wilson. And then to round up my top 10 in the 10 spot is Jalen Waddle. I love watching this kid play. I think he was awesome last year as the second fiddle to Tyreek Hill. And obviously he put up top 10 wide fantasy receiver numbers and was able to explode at any given time. So if you're looking at wide receiver tandems, in my opinion, the Waddle Hill tandem is the best in the league. No offense to Chase and Higgins. I think they're right there neck and neck with how you can stack those two up. But with what Waddle's doing in that 2 position, like that's the only number 2 receiver I would draft and feel comfortable having him as my number 1 receiver in fantasy.
Yeah, I can agree with that because I think that, well, you're probably getting in the back end of the second round. You take a guy like Christian McCaffrey, say you want to go running back, you come around and Waddle's your first wide receiver, you're feeling pretty solid still.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to doing something like that at all. Get, McCaffrey I'm opposed to getting McCaffrey. But if you wanted to get McCaffrey at 5, whatever, and then you come around, then you take Waddle. I agree with your point of like, yeah, he could definitely be your fantasy wide receiver 1, although he's the wide receiver 2 there in Miami. I have a couple more stats I will add to your Waddle take. I have him a little bit further down though, so I'll hold on that for now, and I'll jump into my tier 3, which is a little bit larger. I kind of slid 5 guys in here. All of these guys constantly are going back into the first part of the second round on Underdog. Now, Underdog and Best Ball, these wide receivers are flying off the board early. When you get to your home redraft leagues, Dan, you can speak to this. You just did one last week.
Yeah.
These guys aren't where did you get Lamb?
Round 2. So I was pick 5 in a 12-man league. So I got Kupp at the 5th spot, and it came all the way back around for CeeDee Lamb to land at me at, what would that be? Pick 19.
So yeah, which is, and that's what happens in these redraft leagues. That's what happens in these home leagues. Running backs definitely always get pushed up a little bit more than, your underdogs where people are drafting all off season long, and wide receivers are just a little bit safer, it feels like, to pick.
Yeah.
And also the way that they're set up, right? You can play like 3 or 4 of them versus 2 running backs. So anyways, all these guys back into the first round, front side of the second round, on Underdog all season or off season long. They are Garrett Wilson, who I have at 7, CeeDee Lamb at 8, Amon-Ra St. Brown at 9, the aforementioned Devontae Adams at 10, and then I have Chris Olave. I added him with this tier a little bit. I thought about dropping him to tier 4, but I really, really like Chris Olave. But right now, I want to talk about Garrett Wilson real quick. Top 24 last year in his rookie season.
So good.
I mean, I mean, literally, I wrote down shit ass quarterbacks. Like, who did he like? Zach Wilson,
Chris Streebler.
I mean,
I
can't keep up with all these quarterbacks. Was Mike White there last year, or was that the year before?
Joe Flacco threw passes to him. I mean,
just
Mike
bad
White
quarterback. That's what Mike White was there last year, right?
Yeah, he was there. He got hurt.
Man,
Mike White was probably the best quarterback for him.
And Garrett Wilson was phenomenal. Like he showed up, showed out. Now he's got a former MVP, Aaron Rodgers, throwing to him. And, we might not know exactly what Aaron Rodgers is going to be, but it's an upgrade from what they had. He might not be the Aaron Rodgers of old, but he is better than Zach Wilson, 75-year-old Joe Flacco, Mike White, whoever it is.
Right.
And that, to me, really elevates the expectations for Garrett Wilson this year. Last year, he was number 6 in targets earned, top 12 in routes run, 10th. He was the 10th overall pick, right, out of Ohio State last season. They really believe in this guy. They want him to be great. And he had the 6th most unrealized air yards. So anybody who's new here, really unrealized air yards are passes that landed incomplete, right? So to me, that's a sign of bad quarterback play. They're throwing to him. They're targeting him. He's earning those targets. The quarterback can't find him and connect with him, especially if he's got the 6th most unrealized air yards. Bad quarterback play. You get Aaron Rodgers in there this year. You really elevate from a top 24 to what I think. I mean, I think he has top 5 potential this year to Garrett Wilson there, and it definitely should land in the top 12.
Oh, yeah. He's my keeper in my league with my high school buddies. I drafted him round 14 last year. So
that's
he's going to cost me a round 13 pick in a 10-man league. So, I'm all about it. Quick sidebar, did you watch the Hard Knocks?
I've not watched Hard Knocks.
Oh, man. That first episode really hyped me up for this Garrett Wilson, Aaron Rodgers connection. Now, it's probably a lot of photography or cinematography that's getting me hyped up about it, but I am pumped. Yeah.
Kev says Wilson's going to have a great year, and Mike White has had a crazy career. Yeah. He's got the longest neck in NFL history. He's just the lengthiest dude of all time. And
Davis Mills would like a word about that neck situation.
All right, you're right. You got me with Davis Mills. That thing is Mike White on the roster for the Miami Dolphins.
Great.
So we might see him over the next couple weeks, and then hopefully not any more this season. That would mean Tua's had a nice, healthy, good season.
Ideally, the Hill and Waddle are catching passes from Tua.
Mills. Yeah, Davis Mills. What a pull, man. What a pull. Davis Mills. Let's finish up these top 15 guys here. I'll let you kind of start with your last tier here. I'll go ahead and kick that off.
My tier 4 is the back end of the top 15. So this is the final 5, and I'll start mine off with Chris Olave. I really do like Chris Olave. I think he's the clear number 1, even with a healthy Michael Thomas. We don't know who he is anymore. Who is Michael Thomas anymore? We haven't seen him in full action since like 2019, right? This is going on 4 seasons since he's done anything.
Foot and ankle injuries, right? There's a lot with his legs.
Exactly. What kind of speed is he going to have? What kind of burst is he going to have from his cuts? Is he going to be able to get that release that he got early in his career where he was breaking off? They called him slant boy, right? Is he going to get that? I don't think so. I think that's Olave's turn to kind of be that guy in New Orleans, and he has a clear quarterback upgrade with Derek Carr. Now,
absolutely.
say what you want about Derek Carr, but I think this New Orleans team is going to be dangerous. They're the clear favorites in the NFC South in my mind, and I'm a big fan of what Olave is going to do for that offense.
I hadn't even thought about it, and I was listening to podcasts today. They were talking about the Saints' schedule, and it's
cupcake.
Oh my gosh! Like, I probably ought to put some more money down on the Saints winning the division.
Yeah,
the Saints, being a maybe throw in some money with the Saints being like a top 2 seed in the NFC. Not because they're going to be, not because I think they're Super Bowl contenders, but they play obviously, their own division 6 times.
Right.
But they're playing a third place schedule, I believe. A lot of rookie quarterbacks on their schedule this year. A lot of bad defenses on their schedule this year. Now, that might not be great for the passing offense, but sign me up for some Chris Olave. That is for sure.
Yeah, big fan of his. Followed by my other favorite number 2 receiver, T. Higgins in Cincinnati. DK Metcalf, I'm putting him up there. I think him and Geno Smith for another year, they're really going to ball out, especially with the running back room they're building over there. That's going to be a nice play off the passing game. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think, has potential. He scares me a little bit with injury. I feel like he's missed games, a couple here and there every season he's been in the league. Obviously, Jared Goff isn't a world beater at QB either, but I think that Lions offense has enough power. And then DeAndre Hopkins at 15. I had to sneak him in there.
Man.
He was pacing for like almost 1,500 yards and double-digit tutties last year. I think he's going to come into that Tennessee offense and turn things around. The offensive line is going to be a big decider on that too, though.
You're killing me, man. But you really kill. I almost talked about Treylon Burks, not in top 12, not top 15, but in one of our questions later on. I'm like, man, I can't be talking about 2 Titans wide receivers in the same. We got to talk about Derrick Henry next week.
Oh, it's going to be. I'm so pumped for next week's episode.
Guys, Ryan Tannehill is like 45 years old. How's he going to get the ball to DeAndre Hopkins?
Hey, Malik Willis is showing improvement too. That's at least what Vrabel's saying.
Right. If you got 3 quarterbacks, you got no quarterbacks, right? Isn't that the saying? Come on now.
Yeah.
Come on now. Well, James likes the D-Hop talk from your end, I assume.
Yes, sir.
In the chat, Lee says, "Who's Michael Thomas?" One word, rich. Yeah, he's rich.
You're right.
He's not going to help us get rich by winning fantasy football. Our little $5
don't put your money on him. He's made his money. He doesn't care about your fantasy teams anymore.
That's right. Before I get to my 11 to 15, I will let James throw his hot take in here. Treylon has more receiving yards than D-Hop this year. I am down for this hot take. I am definitely drafting Treylon Burks way more than DeAndre Hopkins. A lot of that's just ADP, honestly, just because you can get Burks later on. I do like Burks now a little bit more with DeAndre Hopkins, which sounds maybe convoluted or how does that work? But
a little contradictory.
To me, you're pulling some of the guys, pulling some of that attention away from Treylon Burks and allowing that to go to DeAndre Hopkins, so maybe Burks can succeed. And again, a second-year wide receiver, had a good season last year, coming into his own versus a guy who's 33? What is Hopkins nowadays?
I think he's barely 30.
Barely 30? Isn't that crazy? Like Cooper Kupp's 30.
Like he's been in the league for
31, and I feel like DeAndre Hopkins is older than those guys.
Yeah, D-Hop is 31.
That's crazy to me. It really is. Like, I really feel like he's so much older than Keenan Allen.
They came in at the same year, didn't they? 2013?
Probably so.
Yeah.
It just feels like, I don't know why. Maybe it's because he's gone to multiple teams.
Yeah.
Maybe that just kind of makes me think like.
And he's been good for longer. Like Keenan Allen missed those first couple years with injuries, before he really busted out.
Yeah, James said 31 as well.
Yeah.
James says he's now not the guy. D-Hop signing was great for him. And talking about Burks, and I agree. He's not going to get all that attention. I also think the D-Hop signing, while I think it takes away, some targets for Okonkwo, I do think it'll open up some more for him. Now,
yeah, there's going to be
underneath the targets he needs, but I definitely think it opens up a little bit more for Okonkwo as well. We talked tight ends last week. You want to hear our top 12 tight ends, please go take some time and listen to that. Watch that on the YouTube channel. It was a good episode. It was a little bit quicker episode, but go check that out. I think we may have mentioned Chig's name a few times, but
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think
on
he's
him.
going to have an opportunity to get some underneath targets there. All right, let's Kev, Moss, Johnson, Jones, and Hopkins. That's the old guys. It's all the old guys. All right, let me talk about my last couple wide receivers here in the top 15. I've got Jalen Waddle at 12, T. Higgins at 13, Deebo Samuel at 14, and Devontae Smith at 15. Outside of Deebo, this is just the wide receiver 2 range. All these guys are elite wide receivers. They would be number ones on any other team in the NFL if they were there. Teams like the Kansas City Chiefs, we would love to have T. Higgins, Jalen Waddle,
Right.
Devonta Smith, any of those guys, right? So this is kind of that tier. I see them all very, very similar. I love Deebo Samuel, one of my favorite players in the NFL. He's just such a beast. He's a man-child. You get him the ball, and it's going to be hard to take him down. So I really like Deebo Samuel. I think he's like a staple in my top 15. But you talked about Jalen Waddle earlier, so I won't go too in depth on him. But I will add to some of the things that you had said. In a season that hit, like, obviously Tua wasn't fully healthy, Waddle still ends up as the 8th best PPR wide receiver, number 1 in both yards per target and yards per reception. So very efficient wide receiver, right?
Yeah.
If he's running routes, he's getting targets, he's catching passes, he's doing a lot with those, whether they're, long passes down the field or shorter passes that he's creating with. He's just a very efficient wide receiver. You can get him mid-second round like we talked about earlier. And I like him. I like him as the number 1 wide receiver. I like him as your second wide receiver. If you're grabbing a Cooper Kupp, like you said earlier, CeeDee Lamb, maybe Waddle falls a little further than Lamb does. Maybe in your home redrafts, maybe you can get Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase and get Waddle to fall back into the second round. I would love that start as well. I probably would avoid in a redraft league a Hill Waddle stack just because that's a lot for a redraft.
Yeah.
Love it in like a best ball where you're just looking for ceiling stuff. But if you can get like a Chase Waddle start, Chase Deebo start, Chase Devontae Smith, any of these guys here in my last tier here, 11 to 15, I like quite a bit at the back end of the second round, early start of the third round. What do you think about where do you have Devontae Smith real fast? Because you don't have him in your top 15.
Yeah, I mean, I still think I don't know. I think he has a lot of potential. I mentioned it earlier, right? That he could kind of take some of those targets away from AJB. But, where I kind of have him sitting, I think he's still kind of a top 20 guy, right? Maybe like a 17, 18 in that range. There's a couple other guys I don't have that you have. I think Deebo's higher than Devontae Smith, in my opinion. So I'd plug him in up there. Yeah, I mean, just looking at it, I think once you get out of the top 15, there's like a couple of other tiers that we could go through where it's like, very slim gaps between them. Like Tyler Lockett somewhere in there. We didn't talk about either of the Jaguars receivers, Calvin Ridley or Christian Kirk. I think both those guys can fit in somewhere. Neither of the Chargers receivers were talked about with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. So there's a lot of like hair splitting that's going on with these receivers. I don't know if I've ever seen a deeper group than what we have now.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. Dan, are you skittish? Oh, wrong one. Are you skittish on Jalen Hurts?
I really like Jalen Hurts from a fantasy perspective, especially because of what he does on the ground.
He runs the football. Yep.
I mean, the dude's a beast. I think it's less about, my thing with the Eagles receivers is less about Hurts' talent and more about their game plan.
Yeah.
And kind of how they win games and what that looks like. They definitely have a tougher schedule than they did last year, right? They're playing the first place schedule, as you mentioned earlier. So those are all things that I'm analyzing. Maybe I'm overanalyzing it with the Eagles guys because I know they're still going to ball out. I'm still going to draft A.J. Brown if he falls to me in the early second, depending on where I'm at. But yeah, I mean, it's just kind of how I'm feeling on it right now. I love Jalen Hurts.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, he's good. He's a good quarterback. I agree with the running situation and just the game plan in general. Are there going to be enough targets? Are there going to be enough pass attempts to even, have two top 12 wide receivers? They had it last year. They just essentially lived on big plays, big games. AJ Brown had 3 touchdown catches in the game. He scored 39 points. It's just big time games like that. And sometimes those are a little bit difficult because you can't necessarily predict them. I do think Devontae Smith's probably a little bit more boomer bust than like a T. Higgins, who they're going to throw the ball all the time. And T. Higgins is always going to get you 10 points, and then occasionally he's going to get you 22. Whereas Devontae Smith's probably going to give you like 4 to 5 a couple of games and then blow up for a
16, 17, and then get you a 25.
It's going to happen, but you're not going to necessarily know when it's going to happen. James is absolutely right. So many stellar receivers in the league. We are going to talk about that just a little bit later on. If you're in the chat with us, thanks for hanging out. Let us know, did we miss anyone in the top 12 for the audio listeners? I'll run through it real quick before we talk about our next little piece. I went Jefferson and 1, Chase, Kupp, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, AJ Brown, Garrett Wilson, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Devontae Adams, Chris Olave, Jalen Waddle, T. Higgins, Debo, and Devontae Smith. That's my top 15. Dan, I'll read yours off for you so you don't have to. Dan goes Jefferson, Chase, Hill, Kupp, Diggs, Lamb, Adams, AJ Brown at 8, Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave, T. Higgins to round out his top 12, DK Metcalf at 13, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then DeAndre Hopkins. Did we miss anybody in the top 15 here? Who do you like that we didn't talk about? Dan, let's take us to the next question.
Yeah, I think, we're looking at the top 15 here. Even if we busted into top 24, looking at all those receivers that we didn't talk about, thinking about those guys, which one do you think is most likely to fall out of the top 24?
This is top 24 might have been a pretty big drop. We always ask this question. Normally we're like, top 20. Who's going to fall in the top 12? Top 24 is going to be a long fall for these guys that we have ranked in the top 15. But I am going to go with, out of all my top 15, I'm going to go Devontae Adams. And not because of his talent. Jimmy G at quarterback, obviously in the past in San Francisco, he's shown that ability to provide pass catchers an opportunity to be good at fantasy football. But he's got a little bit of injury concern here this preseason. The Raiders have this holdout thing looming with Josh Jacobs. I could see this thing just fall apart in Las Vegas. And that's why I'm saying if anybody, it could be Devontae Adams, not because he's not one of the best wide receivers in the league, but literally because I think that this team could just be flat out bad. The bottom could fall out of this thing. People could get, fired, quarterbacks changing over, who's going to be running the football. Like I could just see the Raiders just being absolutely poor this year, which could end up, bringing Devontae Adams down outside the top 15 and potentially outside the top 24.
Man, how sad would that be to see that happen to Devon? I already feel bad.
2 years ago in Green Bay, just absolutely being a stud. And then he leaves Aaron Rodgers and
Yeah, 3 straight NFC championship games and then goes to the Raiders. And,
could play with his best friend who leaves after a year.
Right. And they forced him out a little bit.
Vegas,
right. But it's just a tough situation for him because I don't know that would have been if he had a crystal ball and was able to see, okay, I get to play with my guy, but they're going to push him out. I don't know if he takes that situation.
Right. 100%.
But yeah, I mean, from a fantasy perspective, I could absolutely see that coming down the pipe. Obviously I don't want that to happen. I think his talent is enough to overcome that. But with the way the Raiders have been historically, we haven't seen them really sustain any success for any extended period of time in a very long time. So that could be something to worry about. When I looked at the question, I didn't think it was that crazy. I mean, just looking at a 12-man league, a lot of those guys are starting three receivers each. Like if we push it to 36, it'd be like, okay, now we can really start to look at, how devastating would it be if you went to receivers from this board and then they dropped out of the top 24? You're not winning a Super Bowl with a roster that works that way because of who you skip out on to grab that guy that falls out of the top 24. So, I mean, this really could be like a make or break kind of question if you don't know the answer to it. For me, that guy is DK Metcalf. I think there is potential for him not to have the success that I'm projecting for him. I think with Geno Smith, my fear with him is that he's just going to be a one-hit wonder kind of deal where he had this big time season. There wasn't a lot of tape with him in the Seahawks offense. I don't think defense has really respected him a ton. And now he's going to get a little bit more respect, a little bit more targeting towards him, game plans modeled to him. So those are things that I worry about with DK Metcalf. And I think if I'm looking at top 24, he has the highest potential to maybe drop out of that.
Yeah, and I was trying to look just a little bit last year, like who are some names outside that top 24? If you're looking at total over the course of the year, Cooper Kupp fell down to 23. Obviously, he missed half the season. Juju, I think, was in, probably most people's top 20 last year. He ended up at 27. Deontay Johnson was highly, touted last year.
Oh, yeah.
With what, 0 touchdowns? Love Deontay Johnson this year. His current ADP, that's for sure. Deebo Samuel misses some games, ends up as wide receiver 38. Gabe Davis was inside my top 24 last year, ends up at 36. And then Keenan Allen, of course, missed the first part of the season, but all the way down at 42. So whether it's injuries, whether it's game planning, whether they're losing their jobs, it's definitely going to happen to some of these top 20, top 15 wide receivers. And like you mentioned earlier, like you just don't want to make sure you avoid at least 2 of them because it's kind of inevitable that one of them's going to happen. Lee says that Cooper's not getting enough respect. We did not talk about Amari Cooper at all.
That's true.
I don't really think we're going to. Let's talk Amari Cooper here. Amari Cooper with Jacoby Brissett for most of the season last year ends up as a top 10 wide receiver option. Very consistent, 14.5 PPR points per game. He doesn't really have the ceiling. He did have one 30-point game last year, but doesn't really have like a consistent ceiling and definitely has a very low floor as he went under 10 points multiple times last year. But how are you feeling about Amari Cooper with Deshaun Watson for a full season?
Well, if you look at his production last year, it fell when Deshaun Watson became their starting quarterback. That was when things really started to turn around for Cooper in a bad way on the fantasy sheet. I think maybe a full year with Watson under center, full off season, that sort of thing could be beneficial to them. I do agree with Lee that he's not getting any respect because he didn't get respect last year either, and he ended up being a league winner for some people, right?
Week 17 he had 25. So if you had him on your time, that's when it counted the most. He was the 4th best. In week 17.
All those junk points coming in.
That's right.
But yeah, I mean, I do agree with that point. I think he's not getting a lot of respect. Obviously, we didn't write him in on any of these questions in the show we were prepared for tonight. So I think that's a great point, right? He is the number 1 wide receiver for a team in the National Football League. Like, he's going to put up some points. He's going to get targets, and his quarterback, character issues aside, is not that bad at football. You know what I mean? So he's definitely going to get some points and put them up. I think we have a question we're going to talk about later, wide receiver that we like based on ADP. I think that's definitely one that you could talk about. And I know we're not talking about him tonight, but I do think that's important to note.
Yeah, I've got him showing on Sleeper at ADP of 45. And I mean, I am sitting there wide receiver 17. So he just missed my top 15 here. So I do not mind, an ADP of 45. I was going to check here on the underdog, see where he's at. He's going there. Amari Cooper, again, underdog. It pushes wide receivers up a lot. ADP of 33. So you're talking front end of the third round in best ball formats to the back end of the fourth round in redraft leagues. But I'm just like, if I'm taking Cooper Kupp at the first and a Jalen Waddle in the second, maybe a tight like a Mark Andrews in the third, and then Amari Cooper in the fourth, like, I'm going to run that zero RB life. And so like, I would love that if Amari Cooper is going to be my third. Now I don't want Amari Cooper to be my first, because I do think there is a little bit of risk with Cooper, and really with Deshaun Watson more than Cooper. How's he going to be? But if Cooper is going to be my second or third wide receiver, I'm going to feel really comfortable with that, because I do think there is some reward as well. If Deshaun Watson does show up and is the guy that he used to be, then that could really elevate Cooper's game, and top 10 could happen again very easily. And now you've got him as your third drafted wide receiver. You're going to like that a lot all season long.
Absolutely. I think he's got a lot of potential there.
All right, Dan, we talked about guys who are going to fall out of the top 24. Give me a couple of names of guys that we haven't mentioned yet that you could see potentially ending up in the top 12 towards the end of the football season.
Yeah, man. So I have a couple guys here who could end up there. First, I want to highlight Mike Williams, right? We haven't seen really a healthy season from him, but his production has been fantastic. And I think we've talked about it for a few years now, but this is the year that he leapfrogs Keenan Allen on that depth chart officially. I don't think that I think with Herbert getting paid too, there's just going to be a lot of emphasis on developing that long-term relationship with him and Mike Williams. Keenan Allen's going to be on his way out the door after this season. There's a chance that if he's healthy, that chemistry is going to be able to catapult him up. A couple other guys I'm looking at, Kadarius Toney, obviously the number one receiver in Kansas City. There's so much mystery around that room. You don't know who is going to emerge as the number one. Toney has injury concerns, but if he pops off and turns in a season like what Mahomes was doing with Tyreek Hill before he left, that could be top 10 type of numbers. Christian Kirk I like, and then DJ Moore I like as well as the headline receiver in Chicago. I think they take a similar approach to the Eagles with their offense, and that could mean big plays for DJ Moore, just like what AJ Brown's getting. So those are guys I'm looking at as like potential to get into that realm.
Yeah, I'm excited about DJ Moore. Like, I mean, legitimately, I think that Justin Fields is ready to take that next step as a passer.
Yeah.
Getting a guy like DJ Moore, similar to, I don't think he's going to be like Stephon Diggs by any means, but like, that's what the Bears, I felt like that's kind of what the Bears did. Is like, okay, we've got this quarterback ready to take the next step. How do we get him an elite pass catcher? DJ Moore has always been kind of just chilling out in the 20 range for fantasy football. It's time for him to take a step forward with a guy like Justin Fields as his quarterback. Excited about that prospect for sure. Mike Williams, he might take that next step but I just can't get over the injury thing. Like the guy doesn't let any ball touch the ground. He'll go catch everything. And like that ends up him landing hard on the ground. He goes hard constantly. I don't like that's my biggest red flag for Mike Williams, and quite frankly has me pushing him down. I might be even too low on him. I have him down in the 30s in my
Oh
rankings.
man.
So, and now Quentin Johnston's there, so there's even more people that take targets. I think I'm just so over trying with Mike.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I've talked about it, like he's gonna be it, and maybe this is the year that he's it. Keenan Allen's so much safer. He's not gonna, Keenan Allen's not gonna give you the boom games, but he's a safe wide receiver. Quentin Johnston's coming in here. Gerald Everett is a fan favorite on this show. I don't know what Williams is gonna bring, but I think he has the potential. Like I'm not gonna disagree with that. It's just a matter of, can the guy stay healthy? That really worries me.
It's all the ifs. If he stays healthy, this. If he stays healthy, that. And I'm with you, man. Like being a Chiefs fan like you and I are, obviously we've heard a lot of stuff about the Chargers. Hey, they've got this and that and this. Mike Williams being one of those topics that gets thrown around. And yeah, I mean, I think that's the big if for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Lee says Mike is always hurt. We absolutely agree.
Yeah.
George Pickens could sneak into the top 24. Maybe so. I actually like Deontay Johnson a lot better. I feel like Deontay Johnson is getting overlooked quite a bit, but he's got some positive touchdown regression coming towards him. 0 touchdowns last year. I think the expected touchdown for him was like 5. So those are essentially people going back and looking at plays that probably should have ended as touchdowns, but just didn't for whatever reason. DK Metcalf had a lot of those last year as well, to where he could have had a way different season too. But yeah, George Pickens has some talent there, but I just like Deontay Johnson more than George Pickens. My guys here, I have Calvin Ridley, who I have ranked at 18. Christian Watson in Green Bay, who I've ranked at 20, and Drake London, who I have ranked at wide receiver 23. A lot of question marks around all 3 of these guys. Quarterback questions with Christian Watson and Drake London. Is Jordan Love going to be the guy? Is Desmond Ridder going to be able to keep up in the NFL? Calvin Ridley hasn't played in 2 years, so that's obviously a huge question mark. You're going to see that in my reflection in my rankings. You're going to see that reflected in ADP. These guys are going to be cheaper, but I have all 3 in my top 24. I'm not really scared of taking these guys. Calvin Ridley's getting a little pricey for me. He's getting the camp hype, a couple sweet clips here and there. So he's kind of getting a little pricey for me. But I really do think that all 3 of these guys have a ceiling that could end up in the top 12. And this is like the range. If I'm looking for a little bit more boom bust style guys, I'm going to take these guys. Scratch the rankings. If I'm just building a team that I'm like, okay, I need like a boom bust type wide receiver in this 5th, 6th round, I'm going to take these guys over a guy like Keenan Allen, who, look, if I take a boom bust guy early, I'm going to take Keenan Allen because you know what you're going to get from Keenan Allen. But I'd rather take these high ceiling guys. Like, I think these guys have way better ceiling than some of the other guys in the same range. I'm still ranking Jerry Jeudy. I don't think he has a high ceiling. Terry McLaurin, safe play. I don't think he has a high ceiling. Where I think Drake London, Christian Watson being the number 1 in Green Bay. If Jordan Love's the guy, Christian Watson is going to get plenty of opportunity in Green Bay, and I like that proposition for sure.
Let's not forget what Christian Watson did over the back end stretch of last season, right? It was like 6 or 8 touchdowns in a 4-game span, like just blew up. And it seemed like he was finally getting the offense, but also was finally healthy. He missed a lot of games due to injury early on in that season and then just balled out. I am
4 straight games over 20 points. Weeks 10 to 13, over 20 points, all 4 games.
How many touchdowns did he put up in that span? Like, there was one game he caught 3. I think he had like 4 or 5 in back-to-back weeks total.
Individual week. Let's see. Week 10. Christian Watson, 3 touchdowns, 4 catches on 8 targets, 107 yards, and 3 touchdowns in week 10. 2 wrong guy. 2 touchdowns on 4 catches, 6 targets in week 11.
5 touchdowns in 2 weeks.
Yeah, he was absolutely balling out. Add another touchdown in week 12 on 4 catches, 6 targets. So he wasn't getting a lot of targets, but he was doing a lot with the targets that he had.
Efficient.
Another touchdown in week 13. So he
Yeah.
had 3, 2, 1, 1. So he has 7 touchdowns in 4 weeks headed into the bye week in week 14.
Insane. I like Calvin Ridley. I hate his price this year. I think that's just mind-blowing to me how much draft capital people are giving up, not just in like mock drafts, but in actual drafts. Like you said it already, he hasn't played in 2 years. Like, let's get him on the field before we're just blowing this guy up. And I'm hoping he does well, right? But I'm not going to be one of those guys that spends that draft capital to get that reward. Now, if he falls to me in like round 5, then round 4 or 5, I'd feel a little more comfortable, maybe. But I've seen him go round 3 sometimes. It's just nuts. Like 5 is maybe where I'm a little more comfortable taking him.
Yeah, I've seen him multiple times already in underdog go back end of the second round in best ball. So, Dan, you and I are going to be drafting a best ball team here in a week. So next Friday, Dan's going to join me on the Rumbles of Red.
Yes, sir.
Where we will be drafting a best ball team on underdog. Use promo code Trevor Steinbacher if you want to sign up. Get a $100 deposit match bonus. But the reason I even brought underdog is because I've seen that multiple times over the last week, especially after the clips, like after the camp hype has come out, and he is just skyrocketing up draft boards, and I'm like, well, that's fine because I'm not drafting him there. So
yeah,
let somebody else take that bullet, and I'll just let these other guys like T. Higgins or Devontae Smith just kind of fall a little bit further.
You do you.
I'll take those guys.
I'll do me. Heck yeah.
Right,
so
what's Lee say here? My best top 4 on a 12-team draft: Hill, Smith, Cooper, Pickens. Getting all 4 of those guys. Yeah, I don't mind that.
That's pretty
at
solid.
All.
Proof.
Anytime you can start with Devontae Smith, Tyreek Hill, Amari Cooper, and George Pickens, you're feeling pretty good. Dan, where are we at here? Oh, this is a fun one. I like this one. If Kev's still in here, he's gonna like my answer too. But which wide receiver is your favorite wide receiver to draft based on their ADP? So obviously everybody's favorite might be Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase. But if you're looking at ADP, what wide receiver do you like the most to take a shot on this year?
I think it's important to highlight that too, because this is not about like most talented. This is about pure value in the pick. If he lands to you at this spot, like how hype would you be? For me, that answer is Christian Kirk. And I think his ADP is dropping because of all this hype around Calvin Ridley. The thing is, these two guys embody totally different roles in the offense, and Christian Kirk's role is going to be untouched, right? He's going to be that heavy reception guy. And his ADP right now is what, 70? So, we're talking in a 10-man league, you can pick him up in round 7. And this is a guy who I personally think could catapult into the top 12 in PPR formats. I am all in on Christian Kirk anyway as a follow-up to my first 3 receivers, just based on what his value's bringing to me. This guy was a top 15 receiver last year, and I do not foresee a scenario where he puts up worse numbers than, I don't know, there's guys getting drafted ahead of him like Tyler Lockett. I don't think has a better season than Christian Kirk. There's just with the way that the Jaguars offense is being built out, they're going to be throwing the rock the whole time too. So there's no reason, even if Calvin Ridley does pop off, that both these guys can succeed. And at the 70 spot, I love Christian Kirk.
Yeah, top 12 fantasy wide receiver last year as well. So I think top 12 is right back in it. I do think most of it is strictly because of Calvin Ridley. He hasn't played in 2 years. We have no idea what he's going to do. We've seen Christian Kirk in this offense with Trevor Lawrence. So we'll see how that goes. Kev, my favorite wide receiver to draft right now, and I have the exposure all over Underdog to prove it. And that's Michael Pittman Jr., right? Man, I have really probably drafted too much of this guy. 2 straight seasons as a top 24 wide receiver. He's going at ADP 69 right now. So right around where Christian Kirk is going, and it's a nice spot. He's being drafted in the wide receiver 30 to 35 range. Highest exposure player that I have right now. I just think he's too cheap. I have him ranked right at wide receiver 24. So if I can get him in the wide receiver 30 to 35 range, I feel like I'm getting a value and somebody who is consistent. My assumption is he's dropped because he's got a rookie wide receiver, a rookie quarterback. But that drumbeat is not stopping in Indianapolis. People are loving what they're seeing out of Anthony Richardson. So your boy is loving what he's seeing out of Anthony Richardson. But really, the beat writers are all over this. It seems like Richardson's having a phenomenal training camp. Michael Pittman Jr. is not moving right now in terms of ADP. So if he's going to stick around this same range, I'll take it. I think the highest I took him was 49 in ADP in an Underdog draft. But just as recently as the end of July, I drafted him at pick 75. So he is not going anywhere right now. And I love him in that range, and I will continue to take him in that range, especially in best ball, where I can take Richardson a couple more rounds later and just stack up the Colts a little bit.
Stack that up. Yeah,
I love it.
I'm a little cautious of Michael Pittman Jr., but I mean, the talent is undeniable. And with where he's getting drafted, that's another one that's been kind of surprising me because there's like wide receiver 3s in certain offenses that are getting taken ahead of him from the drafts that I've been a part of or the mock drafts that I've seen. And that's crazy to me to see him drop that far, even with the question marks around Anthony Richardson. Not that people think he's going to come in and do poorly, but that we just haven't seen him in an NFL game. Right. So those are all I think justifiable questions, but there's no reason not to take a flyer on a guy like Michael Pittman Jr. because we've seen what he could do even with guys Carson Wentz throwing him the ball. The talent's undeniable there.
Yeah, absolutely. Over 900 receiving yards last 2 seasons, over 120 targets the last 2 seasons. I mean, the guy he's finished 21 and 22. He's finished over 13 fantasy points per game. He's just consistent. He has been consistent the past 2 seasons, and I don't think that he's going away. And so if I can get him as a wide receiver 3, but with the ideal that he's going to end up as a top 24 wide receiver as he has the last 2 seasons, that feels like great value for me. Kev agrees that range. He thinks it's a deal. I'm pretty sure Kev and I drafted him when Kev was on the Rumbles of Red just a few weeks ago as well. We had to stack up those Colts, of course.
Little Colt stack will do you good.
Yeah, always.
Oh yeah, man! Wow, wide receivers. What a crazy group! Crazy group to talk about. I'm excited for next week because I feel like when I first started going through everything, I was like, man, I feel like running back is still pretty slim. But then I dug into it really deep. I'm like, man, it's actually kind of deep.
Yeah. There's so many I love.
Options.
There's so many there's so many gross running backs that I love.
Yeah.
I love clicking the button on Roschon Johnson.
Ooh, that feels dirty.
There's gross running backs, and I'm like, I don't mind clicking the button on Jeff Wilson. I don't mind. I don't hate it at all.
I don't hate it.
Oh, this sucks. Why am I taking this guy? I'm like, oh, Jeff Wilson. All right, don't mind if I do. Like, I just
There's just guys this year. I agree where you come from with that. There's guys this year that was like you wouldn't want to touch with a 10-foot pole, and now it's like, I don't know. That kind of like ugly duckling things going on with these running backs. They're looking kind of sexy to draft this
Yep.
year.
See, the problem though with me, as always, is I feel gross when I'm taking those top guys. Like when I see Nick Chubb go in the first round, I'm like, really? Nick Chubb in the first? Like, he's not going to catch passes. But then, of course, the report came out he is going to catch passes this year. But Josh Jacobs, I don't want to take Josh Jacobs. Like, I just, there's just guys out there. I'm excited to talk about them. There are a couple guys in the top 5 to 10 that I do really like. I don't want to give them away too quickly. Spoiler alert, their name is not Derrick Henry, or Nick Chubb. But there are guys up there that I am excited about this year, and definitely some guys that are deeper in drafts that I'm really liking. And that's just, that's the zero RB life, man.
That's the life we're living. Yep. That's our world, zero RB. I love that strategy. I've used it for a couple of years now, and it's paid off.
Yeah. I am about on all my underdog teams, I'm about 30% anchor RB. So I'm taking one running back in the first 2 to 3 rounds, just one, and then I'm not touching it until like around 8 or so. And then I'm about, 35% zero RB, to where I'm not taking any running backs until after round 6. So plenty of round 3, 4, and 5 guys that I don't have a lot of exposure to. And I'm okay with that.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you for that.
I'm okay with that. Running backs next week, y'all. If you're still here with us, thank you for being here. We appreciate you. Hit that like button. If you're listening to the audio, leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, if you will. Just help us out a little bit there. Thank you for being over there. Share the podcast with your friends. Let us help you and anybody around you get ready for your fantasy football season. Running backs next week. If you missed the tight ends last week, I can't believe we're already through 2 positional groups. Like we're literally 3 shows away. And then we got week 1. Like we're here, man. We're getting there. It's coming fast.
Emotional.
It is coming fast. We'll have running backs next week, quarterbacks the week after that. And then I think we're going to run a mock draft there towards the end of August. And then after Labor Day, we are in the thick of it, getting you ready for week 1.
It'll be time. Well, Trevor, I had a good time. I'm ready to get to this. I want to see some preseason football. I'm ready.
That's right. Get a little preseason action this week. I'll throw out my Twitter real fast before we get out of here at @TrevorS_FF. Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it.
It's Twitter.
I can still type Twitter in my search bar. It still comes up. So call it what you will. Follow me on it at TrevorS_FF. Friday night, I will be live on the Rumbles of Red. Had some technical difficulties last week, which was just annoying, but we made it through. Still drafted a Hound Dog team. This week, we will probably be drafting a Best Ball Mania team. So we're going to draft the $3 million winning team. Come check us out. 8:15 Central Time right here on the Bite Size Sports YouTube network. And follow all the Bite Size shows. I know right before we went on tonight, Nate and Kev were on talking about the college football and all the conference realignments. So go check that out.
Crazy stuff over there.
It's a lot of changes. So Bite Size Sports is here for you, just trying to get some content out for you. So make sure you subscribe and help us get to 750 subscribers.
Heck yeah. And then hit you with mine as well at Dan_TF40. That's for our show, The Fastest 40. I run with my boy Trey Lawrence at The Fastest_40. If you want to follow that page on X, you can catch us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. And then, of course, check out Bite Size Sports. We're always putting out all the episodes for all of our latest shows at Bite_Size Sports on Twitter or X, however you prefer. Any show that we're putting out, we're always putting links so you can interact with the hosts and ask those questions that you might have, whether it's fantasy football or not. We really cover the whole gamut of sports, which is really cool. A lot of talented guys here, so definitely give that a follow. And then, of course, give us a follow at ADP podcast_FF. Until next week, appreciate everybody joining us for the show. We'll talk running back soon.
I need to know everything, who and the what and the where, I need everything. Trust me, I hear what you're saying, but act like it's new what you're telling me. I'm curious, George, I hop in the Porsche, a 5 and a horse, I'm ready for war, I'm coming for throats, to turn to a ghost, I need to know everything. Now you be surprised at the info you get is by letting them talk, so I'm letting